Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer with you guys. Wanting to just talk a little bit about Australia's national chart and just correlating it to the astrological bodies in the heavens at the moment, and why the whole country is in crisis. And this is a very, very powerful example. I did mention briefly in my lunar eclipse video that I mentioned quite a few things about the fires. They are still going, even though I had a girl email me from America just this morning, and in fact, I've had loads of people email me, and I really just want to thank you all so much for your beautiful thoughts and your prayers, and just all of that. We really appreciate it. It's been incredibly intense, as you can imagine. I mean, I've mentioned this before as well. I'm not personally directly affected in the sense of I don't live within the vicinity of where the fires have taken place, but it doesn't matter. It hurts just as much. The devastation is just huge. It's just huge. So what I want to show you guys is this. Okay, here is Australia's national chart. Okay, so this is the birth chart of Australia, in the same way that you guys all have your own birth chart. Well, every country has its own birth chart. Okay, so when it was declared in office and so on and so forth, that particular date, time, and year is when the chart is cast for. And for Australia, it was the 1st of January 1901 at 1:25 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time in Melbourne, Australia. So this is the birth chart of Australia, and as I said, every country will have their own chart. So if you look very closely here, we're not going to analyze the birth chart of Australia. What we're going to do is we are going to look at the current transits as they are correlating to the Australian national chart. And for those of you that are quite versed in astrology, you would have already picked up what I'm about to discuss. Look at the angles of this birth chart. Just look at the angles. 21 degrees of Aries is the ascendant. 24 degrees of Cancer is the IC. 21 degrees of Libra is the descendant. And of course, the MC is 24 degrees of Capricorn. I've always said in many videos that the angles of a chart are like voltage points. They are incredibly intense, powerful points where all the energy is kind of held in a very intense way. So when you have transiting planets or progressions or primary directions hitting off any of those four angles, you will see very significant events taking place, whether it's for an individual or whether it's for a country. Now, transiting Saturn and transiting Pluto have basically been squaring the ascendant and descendant of this chart. We can see that because we know that Saturn and Pluto, as I speak today, which is the 8th of January 2020, transiting Saturn and transiting Pluto are actually at 22 degrees of Capricorn. So Pluto has been squaring these two angles for a while. Saturn has also been squaring those two angles last year. And now, while we are proceeding forward to this final peak of the Saturn Pluto conjunction, which becomes exact this month, what we have is the transiting Saturn and transiting Pluto, which would be up here, right? Now, when you look at this chart visually, don't make the mistake in thinking that the Saturn and the Sun of this Australia national chart, that these planets are in the 10th house. They're not. They're actually in the 9th. Okay. It's just the way the program draws it up because it can't physically fit everything into one house when there's so many bodies in there. So it just flips things over. Okay. But you can see right up the top, there's 24 degrees of Capricorn. Okay. So clearly if the sun's at 10 and 7, it's still, 15, 14 degrees away from being 24, right? So clearly the sun and Saturn belong in the 9th house. However, it doesn't matter. That's I'm just pointing that out because some people might visually look at that and just not see it as it truly is. Okay, that's the only point I was making there. Now, transiting Saturn, transiting Pluto are right on approaching the MC, the top part of the chart, Australia's national chart, by a conjunction, meaning that Saturn Pluto is going to be opposite the IC, and of course, still within range, squaring the ascendant and descendant. So, what we're really looking at here is this chart reflects the entire country, right? So, the way people live, everything that impacts people's lives here could be related back to these 4 angles. Okay. The fourth is the home, the homes basically that people have lost, right? There's been thousands of people that have lost their homes and it's still going. It's the 8th of January and they are predicting really hot weather coming up by the end of this week. So the battle is not over yet. And there's already been, I can't remember how many million hectares of land burnt, lost. I know the earth will replenish herself ultimately and she will regenerate and give birth again. But regardless of that, the damage has severe consequences on a number of levels. So anyway, back to this chart. What you can see is here's the people's homes, and it's in Cancer because Australia happens to have the natural order of the zodiac as its chart. Okay, when you look at the natural order of the zodiac, Aries is always on the ascendant point. And therefore every single house subsequently has its correct sign correlating to the house. So it's the natural order of the zodiac. You couldn't get a more clear example. And that's why when we have Saturn and Pluto up here in Capricorn, naturally it's going to form a square to Aries, to Libra, and an opposition to Cancer. So we're basically talking about a cardinal cross. These are the 4 cardinal signs. So the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, which is coming up to its peak, is hitting off this entire chart by basically being in very close proximity with its aspects and orbs, and the aspects being primary major aspects such as conjunction, opposition, and squares, of course. So this cross, if you like, or this chart is being hit off at every major point of the chart, which is homes, people's homes, it's people's identity, it's people's relationships, and it's also just how the country is being seen publicly at the moment, just to put it very, very simply. So we don't only have the Pluto-Saturn, we have the series coming up as well, There's a lot of Capricorn energy at the moment. So this is what's happening to Australia's national chart, okay, which is a clear, direct reflection and correlation to the whole country being in crisis. Every single angle of the chart is being hit off, and it's going to get worse. And I hope that I'm wrong. I sincerely hope that I'm wrong. But what's going to happen is Saturn still needs to get to 24, and so does Pluto. So they haven't quite gotten there yet. So they will have their final conjunction, but they still need to get to that point where they pass this 24 degrees of Cancer and 24 degrees of Capricorn. And also the reason I say it's likely to get worse is because the final conjunction of Saturn Pluto has not occurred yet. We are building up to it. These are the most intense days. You know, this month, as I said in the lunar eclipse video, this month is going to be the most testing and trying and most challenging month. It already is. That's what's happening. And it's not just Australia that's going through shit. I know that. But Australia at the moment is witnessing fires that have never happened before, not to this extent. And our pathetic Prime Minister, who I don't know what's going on with his evolutionary journey and so forth, but he's totally unconscious. He's totally freaking sleepwalking. He's just absolutely greedy. He is a Taurus, and no offense to Taurians, because I have one of my best friends is a Taurus. But I have to be honest with you, Taurus at the most unconscious level, okay, I'm talking at the most unconscious personality-based level, is not about people. It does not have insight, awareness, empathy, compassion, sensitivity, understanding about people. Not at all. And our Prime Minister is a prime freaking example of just how unconscious he is and what that actually looks like when you give that power to an unconscious individual, basically leading our country that has left it to frickin' burn. That's what we're dealing with. There's footage of him, for example, when he was caught out traveling to Hawaii while our country's freaking burning and there was no help. These poor firefighters, my heart and soul just goes out to them. The courage that these guys have shown is just, it's out of this world. They have risked their lives over and over and over to try and save people's homes, to try and save animals, to try and save people. They are freaking exhausted. They don't even have the proper equipment. They have been not given funds to actually have the proper equipment, such a simple thing such as an actual proper mask that needs to be used when they are freaking inhaling these toxic fumes when they walk into infernos, which is what they've been doing. And they've had flimsy fake little masks, for example. I mean, it's beyond horrendous what's been happening here. And a lot of these details will not get shared, you know, in the rest of the world, which is why I'm making a point of it. And what I'm saying is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many complex layers to this. You know, we can take it right back to the Aboriginals, which are the authentic, they hold the true authenticity of this land. They've been around for thousands of years. They're a very old indigenous culture who have incredible earth wisdom, and they have been treated like shit in this country as long as I've been on this earth plane. They have, yeah, it's so many of their natural rights have been taken away from them. Anyway, they have the wisdom to deal with Mother Earth's necessities. So they know how to set fire trails where they need to be set in order to basically keep things clean and consistent and not getting out of control. They know how to do this. These trails used to be set all the time. And I heard that there was a law that was passed by one of our prime ministers that did not allow these people to continue to do this, which was just um, a natural thing, piece of wisdom that they understand about the land. For the rest of us here, we wouldn't have a clue about this land, not to the extent that these people do. These people, they're indigenous. You know, this is what they've been born into. Their ancestors and all the generations that have been brought forward. This is that they're born into this stuff. It's natural to them, and to push them aside and treat them like crap and not give them their natural sort of rights. And then we've got the issues of our water being bought by external corporations, namely China, some other places as well, and therefore certain government bodies making billions of money out of water, right? And creating droughts here in this country, deliberately creating droughts because they're selling off the water. Who the fuck thinks they have the right to sell water? I mean, what sort of madness has this world come to that it's gotten to the point where water is being traded for billions of dollars and then leaving the planet or parts of the planet in drought? I mean, really, we are really in crisis. The world's in crisis, let's face it. Let's be honest, let's be realistic. There are amazing, beautiful things happening as well. I don't deny that, and I don't lose sight of that. However, this month is the highlight of the sheer freaking imbalance that exists on this earth plane and the crisis that we are facing because of the unconsciousness of the majority, particularly the people in so-called power. And therefore, this is what we get to experience. I just want to show you something else, which is really interesting. Now, I want you to look at this date here, 24th of January, 2020. That's coming up very soon, a couple of weeks' time. I've chosen this date. I was having a chat to my friend/mentor, and we were looking at this chart, and we've both arrived to the conclusion that this is going to be this day before, day after, is going to be highly significant in the world. And the reason is because Pluto, Moon, Saturn series, those energies there, even, you could even forget about Jupiter and the South Node, even though they are highly significant because they're in Saturn's sign. But this conjunction here, Pluto, Moon, Saturn series, first of all, Pluto series correlates to the myth of Ceres, right? Pluto abducted Ceres' daughter, right? So the whole story about Ceres is that she lost her daughter through Pluto abducting her. And anyway, look, I have gone into the myth in previous videos, so I don't want to go through the myth again. But when you see symbols like this, you've got to pay attention. This is screaming out the literal mythology being played out in the world. Okay, that's what this is showing us. And then we have Saturn there acting as a very difficult force. I'll explain why in a moment. Also, we have the moon, and the moon is a very powerful symbol when it comes to this whole these mythological symbols. So the moon's connected to the Pluto series. Ceres is the Earth Mother. Okay, the moon's the Earth Mother as well, we could say, and it certainly correlates to people's homes, families, and then Pluto series is always about loss, grief, abduction, rape, all those sorts of things, taken against your own will and so forth. Pretty dark stuff. Pretty dark stuff. I know. So when you see this quadruple conjunction here, uh, this is a very, very powerful symbolic cosmic energy that in Australia's chart is basically conjunct the midheaven, conjunct Australia's midheaven. So that's why I'm saying that this month, before it's over, there's a lot more loss to actually see and experience. That's one thing. The other thing is this. I checked when Pluto was last in Capricorn. Now, there's been a few, obviously, Pluto and Saturn conjunctions, over the last few hundred years, obviously, because this conjunction occurs every 33 to 38 years, thereabouts. Just depends on the movement of Pluto. It is the slowest moving body. So the last Pluto-Saturn conjunction we had was in the 80s. So all those babies born in the 80s who have the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Scorpio, very, very tough aspect. Very tough aspect, but incredibly resilient. These 80s babies that were born with this conjunction, very powerful. Now, the last time before that, there was a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in World War One, which was 1914, and that was in Cancer, okay? And that was at 0 degrees of Cancer. Now, for those of you that are not aware, in astrology, there are certain cardinal degrees in the zodiac and certain mutable degrees in the zodiac that are considered to be critical degrees. Now, 0 degrees of cardinal, meaning Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, when you see a point, a planet, a body at 0 degrees of any of those 4 signs, it's at a critical degree. There's something very, very critical about that planetary body. So you could have that in your birth chart. Now, going back to World War One in 1914, Saturn-Pluto conjunction, 0 degrees of Cancer, critical degree. Cancer was all about people's homes being completely demolished, blown away. The trauma that people experienced was nothing that any of us could ever understand. We haven't been through it. Not in this life anyway. And then we can continue going back. I just kept on going back to see when was the actual last time that Saturn and Pluto formed a conjunction in the sign of Capricorn. And what I discovered is that the last time that happened was in the year of 1518, 1518. So that's basically medieval times. Now, I don't know a lot about the history of what was going on in 1518. I know little bits and pieces here and there, but that would be worth examining in greater depth, because when you are wanting to understand a planetary conjunction of this magnitude and this nature is really, really important, and the way to really get a feel for it and understand perhaps what it's going to be presenting this time around is it's important to look at the history of when that exact last conjunction occurred. One thing that was going on in that time basically was the slavery trade, which was huge because it was happening everywhere. And it was happening in the military. It was happening in just trading people off, just as if, as if they're a glass, not even a human. Didn't really matter. There was trade for prostitution. There was trade for virtually everything when it came to people. And there were, it was like in this, around about this particular year, or those couple of years there was almost 2 million people that had been sold in the context of a slave trade. That's pretty significant. I don't know exactly right now. I'd need to think about that a bit more. But that was just one of the things I noticed about what was happening around that time. Now, I think we could draw correlations from that in probably a lot of different ways. It's just a lot more hidden now, um, because people have learned how to hide things a lot better. Even though, on the other hand, with technology, there's a lot that people, you could say, don't get away with because there's cameras filming everywhere. You know, nowadays everyone's iPhone has a camera, so anything can be filmed at any moment. But the point still is that, you know, there's certain forces in play that are pulling the puppet strings of other people that they've got beneath them, and hiding. They're hiding behind, you know, the puppets that they've got up front. You know, they trade or slavery or whatever it's probably still going on, you know, in different ways. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is. It's just that the world obviously is not defined or understood in the same way it was as it was in the medieval times. But I'm just pointing out that you could find correlations. It's just presented in different ways, seen in and understood in different ways, and hidden in a lot of different ways. Now, the other major thing that is really worth mentioning here is that, the reason in current times, so fast forward back to 8th of January 2020, the reason this Saturn Pluto conjunction, even though it happens every 33 years or so, the reason this particular one at this time in history is so freaking powerful is because Pluto is in Saturn's sign. Okay, now when we go back to the 80s, for example, the Saturn Pluto conjunction was in Scorpio. Okay, so that was Pluto's sign, but it wasn't Saturn's sign. But this energy is so extremely magnified and intensified because Pluto is in Saturn's sign. And this actually started when Pluto first went into Capricorn, which was around about 2008, 2007, around there was pretty massive turning point of things happening around the world at that time as well. It certainly got things started. So Pluto in Capricorn has been creating this crisis. It's appearing as crisis because the falseness and the cracks are being revealed. And when you've got, you know, the majority trying to project this falseness, of course there's going to be crisis when an energy swoops in that tries to reveal what they're actually up to, which is what Pluto is doing. And then, of course, there's the element of the personality projecting it onto, for example, at the moment we have Trump, the hero Trump, who's just, you know, assassinated somebody from Iran, pretty high leader. And now, of course, Iran has started their retaliation already. Started today, I think, today or yesterday, last night. They've already sent their missiles into Iraq, US military base, and they've already killed a number of US military people. And this is just the beginning. So, you know, I said even in the lunar eclipse video, keep an eye on Iran and US. It's obvious anyway, you know, you don't have to be Einstein to figure that out. But I'm just pointing out that you've got to look at the timing of all this. This is all happening with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And this Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn is extremely powerful because Pluto is in Saturn's sign. That's very, very significant. That is very different to the conjunction that occurred in the 80s where Saturn and Pluto was in Scorpio. And this is why the crisis at the moment is severe. And it's going to actually, it's going to get bigger. And I think we can see that when we look around. Unfortunately, unfortunately. On the other hand, uh, there are a lot of the old structures. They do need to be dismantled. And in amongst the chaos and the crisis, that is actually happening. But what our everyday mind, you could say, left brain, um, sees and hears because of the vultures and the parasites who are called media, who just make a killing on projecting fear, um, and obviously just projecting what they want the collective to think and believe and understand. So people are just bombarded by all this fear-based uh, images, information, and so forth. And as I said in the lunar eclipse video, this month is going to be the heaviest month for these sorts of things. It's literally gotten to me as well. I have found myself just being just so exhausted and so devastated with what's been happening here in our country. And my brother pointed out just yesterday, there's one image, for example, and this is just only one example, okay, but there's one particular image circulating, which is a firefighter leaning over, giving some water to a koala. And this has become quite iconic, this particular image. However, it's from 2017. It's not even current. But the media are just, that's what they're like. They're just trying to find as much as they can, because this is the country is burning, right? People are in sheer devastation, agony and pain, loss, confusion, grief, anger. And the media, of course, all they give a shit about is, well, how much money can they make out of this crisis? And it's always the case, isn't it? But they're just totally taking the piss. That's just so, it's beyond selfish and beyond inhumane. I don't even know what word there is to use to describe that kind of um, cold, cold behavior. But the point of that is that we are all exposed to that in large ways, and we get swept away. You know, we get swept up in it all, and it sidetracks us from remembering the bigger things that are happening that are not so obvious, from spiritual dimensions, from the earth actually also purifying and cleansing herself, transcending. Um, she's she's gotten to the point where, I mean, we're virtually, the world has been killing her, and this is almost, you could say, like a massive retaliation on the one hand, just needing to purge herself of the toxins that have been poured into her over a very long period of time. So these are, powerful historical moments we are witnessing and living in, and this Saturn Pluto conjunction is speaking to most of it since Saturn went into Pluto 2008, which is what, 12 years now. So it's been a long time of profound, significant crisis and change that's been going on collectively. And now with Saturn merging with Pluto in the last 2.5 years, there's been an intensified experience of that. And now we are just coming up to the absolute end of that. And it's not going to end with, bells and people singing and dancing. It's going to end with really severe, catastrophic things taking place. And that's, as I said, that's already happening. So pay attention to this date now. The lunar eclipse is happening 10th, 11th of January. And then the 13th of January, there's another stellium going on, which I pointed out to in my previous video, which includes Mercury in Capricorn. But this date here, 24th, is even more significant because of the moon being there. The moon brings in this whole other dimension. The moon is Mother Earth. And also, just finally, and I'll leave it here for today, this is Hades, the body known as Hades. Now, Hades is the Greek name, you could say, for Pluto. Now, Hades is quite a complex figure, very similar to Pluto, obviously, but it does reflect the underworld, the darkness, death, transformation, the obvious, very similar to Pluto. And it's in this chart here, for instance, conjunct the North Node in Cancer, and obviously opposite all of these planets here. So we've got very powerful symbols connecting to destruction and death, which is ultimately the purging and clearing and transformation for new, very important new waves of, what can I call it? Well, new way of life in a lot of ways, on multiple levels, inwardly and externally. We just simply cannot go on the way we have been. That's evident on every single level. And these critical events are happening because of that. If the world was in balance and in harmony, there would be peace. The earth would be rejoicing in peace as well. She's not. She's screaming to release the toxins we've put into her. That's just one level, which is, in my opinion, the most important, because we, even the global warming theory, concept, idea, belief, whatever you want to call it, it's not separate to us. The earth breathes and we breathe with her. If she stops breathing, then we stop breathing. So we can't separate ourselves from the earth. In the same way, the sun, that is, millions and millions and millions of billions of miles away, it's also part of us. We are part of it. Without it, we would not be able to exist. So we can't separate ourselves from planetary cosmic forces. Whatever we do has an impact on those. In the same way, they have an impact on us. And people just really need to wake the fuck up. Sorry for my language. Okay, so yeah, there you have it. Australia's national chart, cross of matter, 4 angles being hit off by Saturn Pluto series. And there's the devastation of this country, without a doubt. 100% clear. If you're not clear about this, leave your question or comment below. I'm happy to respond as best as I can. But I think it's pretty clear. Okay, I'll leave it there, and I'll see you guys soon. By the way, Uranus is going direct on the what is it, 10th or 11th January. I think you can see here that it's already direct in this chart, for example. And so therefore Uranus goes direct when the Saturn-Pluto conjunction are exact. Uranus has already gone direct. So I think that's I'm not sure that's going to help, Uranus being direct. That's just another force that, when that's operating down here on the unconscious personality, egocentric level, Uranus can be very dangerous as well. And Uranus will be completely open and moving forward. So yeah, let's see what happens. I'll be back to talk about perhaps Uranus going direct in a different sort of context and light. I know this has been quite a heavy kind of offering again today, guys, and I apologize. Um, but I'm just speaking about, the facts of what's going on, to my knowledge at least, and with my understanding. Yeah. Okay. See you guys very soon. Much love. Thanks for listening. Bye.